Hi everyone, welcome back to Maximum Attack Rallying. It is Thursday, so it's time for your weekly dose of rallying chit chat. I'm going to start with a thank you, maybe two thank yous. One thank you, so last week's video on the hybrid situation, it was my first video to get 10,000 views, so I want to say thank you to everyone that has watched that. If you haven't watched it, do have a look. I'll put the link in the description so you can. It's just, I'm really grateful. I want to say how grateful I am for everyone that's engaged with the channel recently. That video generated a lot of comments. While I didn't agree with all of them, I am very grateful for you all taking the time to share your views. I really enjoy that. I like that part of it. I want to have a discussion with people because I think at times we don't talk enough. And I love it when people put their views across. Obviously, social media can be quite an angry place. So it's nice to have people sharing their views generally in a respectful way. A couple of people weren't quite so respectful to each other, but I really enjoy it. So I'm really grateful for your support. Obviously, we've crossed that magical 1,000 subscriber threshold, shall we say. So I'm very grateful for that too. It's nice. I'm very pleased that things are on the up. I know it's still a small channel, but I am very appreciative of you all taking the time to watch and comment and get involved. So very important that I said that. What I want to talk about in this video is Kalle Rovanperä. So young Rovanperä has he has captured some criticism this week for some comments that he made following the Fiorio Cup. So if you don't know what the Fiorio Cup is, it is a kind of rally sprint type event organised by the family of former Lancia team boss Cesar Fiorio. Basically, it's just a short type sprint event. I think people share cars. There was some coverage, anyway, there was some coverage about it on Dirtfish, and Dirtfish head of content, Alistair Fisher, managed to speak to Kalle Rovanperä across that event. And Kalle said some interesting things, and some of those things have upset some people. And I think I kind of understand why, to be honest. I don't agree with everything that Kalle said, but I do also take on board some of what he said because I do think he had some points. So I just wanted to run through it and have a little chat about it because I think there's some interesting things. I don't want to say the criticism of deserved because we shouldn't criticise him for having an opinion. I think one thing I like about Rovanperä is that he says what he thinks and he voices his opinion and he is entitled to do that. But I don't agree with everything he said. So basically, the thrust of what he said is that right now rallies are too long. The events are too long, they take too much time, the schedule isn't done in the right way. And I think he does have some points. So I'm going to, you'll have to excuse me, I'm going to look down a little bit because I want to read some of the things that he said to you, to Alistair, because I think it's interesting. So one of the things he said is rally organisers need to make it more compact, not so early starts, not so late finishes. Then people can interact with the drivers when they're not super busy or tired and angry all the time. I do see what he's saying there. I think right now the schedule is very full and we don't get a lot of time with the drivers. The drivers don't get a lot of time to relax. And I do think there is something there. You know, if you look at a typical day in the WRC, particularly a Saturday, for example, they'll leave the service park quite early in the morning. You know, they'll obviously have quite long road sections. You might get a little bit of time with them before the stages. You know, if you look at what Dirtfish do with the morning interviews, they'll get a little bit of time there, and then you'll get a media zone at lunchtime, media zone at the end of the day, and then they rush off back to the hotel. So I do see his point. I think the struggle is how to shorten the day, isn't it? And that's where things get a little bit trickier because you've got this issue of road sections and controlling the route, haven't you? And that does come down often to geography and how do you deal with the fact that rallies take place over a large area. The thing is as Kalle pointed out in his comments, you know, this might be determined by sponsors. You know, you might have a region in a particular country sponsoring the rally and then another region involved. And that means they both want to be a part of it. And that means you might end up with a long road section, you know, to transit between those two areas. And it's difficult to avoid that. You know, if you're trying to put on an event, you have to pay for it. So you need the money. And I understand why the organisers do that. I also understand Kalle's point. He also said that it can be difficult to find lots of stages in a small area, and that is true. You know, there are some events, if you take IPA, for example, in Belgium, you know, they're very lucky, aren't they? They can put in a lot of stages in a very compact overall route. You know, it's quite a compact rally. If you've ever been there to spectate, you know, it's very easy to jump between stages relative to an event like Rally GB, for example, where it's in a much more remote area and you have to drive around mountains and things. You know, Monte Carlo is another one. So some of those events, it's difficult to not have a lot of miles on the road. So I do get that. But I would say that, I think that is, at the same time, that is part of the challenge. While we should aim to minimise road and liaison mileage, I think that's an admirable goal. I also think we need to be mindful of the geography of these events, and we can't always do that. And also, I would also argue that is potentially sometimes part of the challenge. I think the big thing for me is that one thing that Kalle said is that, if we manage the routes better, the rallies could be over, the day could be done by 5 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock. And I would caution, this is where I would caution Rovanperä, because I don't think that's necessarily something we want to aim for. Yes, you could argue that we don't want to be finishing at 10 o'clock every day, particularly if they're out on the road again at 6 a.m. But at the same time, we don't want rallying to become 9 to 5. The WRC isn't a 9 to 5 sport. That is part of the appeal. I would argue that we want to give events the freedom to create, a unique route that doesn't always finish at 5 o'clock. We want some rallies to have stages running into the evening or to the night time. We don't want to make it formulaic. The WRC isn't 9 to 5. It's never been 9 to 5, and it never should be 9 to 5. If you make it 9 to 5 and you make it very short, so there's barely any road mileage, and you've got short, sharp stages, it almost might as well be rally sprinting or rally cross or something like that. It loses its personality. So I think we need to be very careful about that. His overarching point about managing the schedule and reducing road mileage is a valid one, absolutely. I think there are things that we could do to give the drivers more time to interact with the fans, and I think that is really important. We want the drivers to have some time to stop on road sections, to stop before stages, so that the fans can see them and get up close with them. We don't want the only contact that they have to be in media zones or autograph zones. We want to give them time to interact with drivers. So I think that is really important. And it does feel, if you're at an event, the drivers come back to service, they do a media zone and they disappear because they're busy. But I think there's other things there that we can do. As I said, we should give events the freedom to create interesting routes that one day it might start at 10 o'clock in the morning and finish at 10 o'clock at night. One day it might start at 6 o'clock in the morning and finishing at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We need to give that freedom as long as the event is good. I'm not bothered about how long the day is, as long as the event is really good. But I think there's a couple of other things that we need to be mindful of. As I said, partly that is creating time for the drivers to interact. I think that in itself can be improved by the way that we structure the service area, for example. I know there is talk of changing things to get rid of the Hyundai service building, and I think that's a good thing. The drivers should be more visible. I know they want time to go and rest and have some time to kind of refocus, and that is important. But we also want them to be hanging around the service area, don't we? We want them to be hanging around, talking to the engineers, talking to the mechanics, talking to the fans. So I think there is space to do that, and I think reducing the road mileage, as Rovanperä said, is one way that we can do that. But there are other ways. I think there's one crucial thing that he didn't talk about, and that is video. Video, yes. Ironic, isn't it? Because I'm sitting here recording myself, but I don't mean video of me. I mean video of the stages. We've reached a point, haven't we, where the crews have almost limitless access to video. All of the cars have cameras in them, and the drivers can now watch footage. They could watch footage every second they're not in the car. They can watch what the other drivers are doing. They can watch coverage on All Live. They can watch footage from previous years. There is so much video for them to watch. And I think that, for me, is becoming problematic. I'm willing to bet that they spend a lot of their time watching onboards. They'll reach the end of the day and they might go back to the hotel room, review their pace notes for the next day, and start watching onboards of the stages that are coming. And I think, we're talking about drivers not having enough time to do other things, to interact with the fans, to relax. Well, I think that's maybe part of the problem, isn't it? There's this pressure to keep watching onboards in any downtime that you have, because you're looking for every single advantage that you can possibly get. And I understand it. You can see why they do it, because they don't want to be at a disadvantage to someone who's watching more footage than them. But I think it is a bit of a problem that we need to address. I'm not sure how we address it. They can access this stuff on their phone, and we can't take their phones away from them, can we? So it's very difficult to police, but maybe we have to reach a point where they're not allowed the All Live app on their phones over an event weekend that they're competing on, or they have so many hours or minutes per day that they're allowed to be reviewing onboards. Because, like I said, I get why they do it, because they want the performance advantage. But at the same time, if everyone's watching onboards all the time, you've got two issues, haven't you? One, it takes up a lot of time during the day, and that's time that they could either be relaxing or it's time that they could be spending with the fans, which I think is really important. And also, if you're just watching onboards constantly and watching the cars ahead of you go through the stages on all live, it's kind of taking some of the mystery away from it, isn't it? You know, one of the beauties of rallying, as well as it not being 9 to 5, as we've talked about, is the unknown. You know, it's supposed to be like an adventure. It's supposed to be an endurance test. So if you've seen all the stages multiple times on video from that year and from previous years, then you know what, you've kind of lost some of that element, have you? You've lost that element of adventure. So I think that is an issue that we perhaps need to be aware of, as well as the excessive road mileage that we sometimes have on some events, and as well as some of the other issues I mentioned. So I don't want to pile in on Rovanperä because he does, like I said, he does have a point. That said, I don't subscribe to this idea that rallying should try and finish by 5 o'clock. I don't buy that. You know, I get that we should try and minimise road mileage where we can, but we don't want it to become a formulaic, compact, kind of non-adventure, because it's supposed to be an adventure. And if Rovanperä reaches a point where he doesn't want that adventure, well, with the greatest respect, you know, he can go off and do something else, can't he? Because that's the game. You know, that's what it should be. And I think it's very important that we keep that, because if we get rid of that endurance element and those long days, then rallying has lost something. But I think he's right. I think his overarching point is right. Perhaps, you know, with the language barrier and things, it didn't come across as it could have done. I'm sure he enjoys the endurance element in many respects, but he does have a point. Because I want to wrap this up, he does have a point. So I don't think we should pile on. But yeah, I think this finishing by 5 o'clock thing, I think we need to be very, very careful of. That's not what we want, is it? Rallying is an endurance sport. It is a challenge, and we need to retain that. But Rovanperä is right in his overarching point. There are things we could do to make it a bit better, and most importantly, give the drivers time to spend with the fans. You know, we want them on road sections to spend time with the fans, to meet the fans, in service, you know, to be around so people can talk to them, take photos and all that stuff, because that's really important, because that is what is going to make people come back to the sport, isn't it? So I wanted to talk about that. I thought it was an interesting topic, and obviously it's got a big reaction online. So do let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I'm interested, as I said, right at the top, to hear what you have to say. As always, thank you for your support. Please like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next time.